The Superman movie has its budget officially revealed in the Hollywood trades, and it's way more expensive than Warner Brothers first reported. The Fantastic Four movies tickets went on sale this week, and the early numbers are shocking in a good way. And we have new reporting about Kathleen Kennedy's exit from Lucasfilm and what the future of Star Wars holds. Will there be any actual change? All of that and more coming at you right now. This is the Nerdy News Rundown.
It's like the news, but for nerds.
Your eyes do not deceive you. We're doing the Nerdy News Rundown again. TLDR on this, guys. Over the last couple of years, I've pivoted my content a lot into streaming, and it's been good. But I've kind of felt like I've neglected this channel a bit, and so I've been trying to figure out a way to involve the main Den of Nerds channel more in what I'm like really doing with content. And so we're bringing the Nerdy News Rundown back. Now, what I had been doing is streaming 5 days a week over on my streaming channel starting at 11 a.m. and going over all of the crazy news that's out there in the nerdy world. But from now on, I'm not going to be doing that particular stream on Friday. And instead, I will be doing this programmed show, the Nerdy News Rundown, which will be going over the biggest and craziest nerdy news of the week and hopefully giving you more updates. Sometimes we'll talk about a story on Monday and Tuesday, and there'll be more clarification as the week goes on. And so make sure you're subscribed here. And a lot of you OG subscribers remember, this used to be the main content. I used to do the Nerdy News Rundown multiple times a week, and that was just what I did. All right, let's get into the news. Let's begin with Superman. Now, this is a really crazy story, guys. Just the other day in the Hollywood Reporter, it was revealed that Superman's budget is actually much higher than what it was first reported to be. I'm going to read right from the Hollywood Reporter article because it's kind of mind-blowing and it gives us a lot of context. The article reads, last year, documents filed by the Superman production team with the Ohio government seeking incentives listed the gross budget of the highly anticipated July film as $363.8 million. When that number was reported, director James Gunn, who also runs DC Studios, lambasted the article. How in the world do they think they know what our budget is? He wrote on social media. In recent days, DC suggested the budget is a net $225 million after incentives and tax breaks. Yet one longtime financier says the $363 million figure isn't incorrect. And sources say DC and its parent could spend as much as $200 million on the global marketing campaign compared with the usual $150 million for an all-audience summer tentpole. It wouldn't be a surprise since Superman kicks off the Gunn era and needs to work at the box office. Either way, between the production budget and the marketing, it's certain to land in the $400 million club. Now, there's a couple of things we got to mention here that make this story even more fascinating. First of all, the Hollywood trades usually very friendly to the industry. They actually are there for the studios in a lot of ways. And so it's so wild that you have a Hollywood trade literally calling out the director and the president of a studio for lambasting an article which they are now reporting was accurate. Now, I think most of us know why this is going on. James Gunn has picked a lot of fights with journalists, with insiders, with scoopers. He's kind of ridiculous on social media. And so I think, frankly, he's pissed a lot of people off. This is kind of unusual reporting. And what makes it even more interesting is a different Hollywood trade, albeit a less prestigious one. The Wrap recently reported an article confirming that $225 million number, which the Hollywood Reporter is now saying was DC trying to get us to think that was the number. Like, it's right there in their article. It says in recent days, DC suggested the budget is a net $225 million after incentives and tax breaks. That's referring to Humberto Gonzalez's article. So what does this mean? What is happening? Well, it basically means that they spent a shit ton of money making this Superman movie. And it's looking like, according to the Hollywood Reporter, the budget total, including marketing, is going to get to $400 million. Now, if I do some quick math here and use the sort of rule of thumb for box office returns and multiply that budget by 2.5, you are at $1 billion. What that literally means is the Superman movie would have to make at least $1 billion to break even, guys, to break even, not even to be profitable. But here's the thing, to be absolutely fair to Gunn, this is not particularly unusual for launching a big cinematic universe. I think the truth is this movie doesn't have to itself be a fiscally responsible endeavor if it paves the way for multiple other projects that will make the studio money. Like, we all know what's going on here. David Zaslav wanted an MCU. He was very clear about that. And this is the first film in this new cinematic universe. It is the first film of a new studio, DC Studios, which again was sort of Zaslav's idea to replicate what Marvel Studios had. And so what I'm trying to say here is that I don't even think this movie needs to be profitable to be successful. We have another great example of a movie that costs around $400 million in Mission Impossible, the new one. And then all of Hollywood is buzzing about that movie, even though it was basically guaranteed to not be profitable in its theatrical run. Because of the way the industry is changing, because of acquisitions, tech companies, ancillary revenue streams, sometimes brand and IP is more important than the actual take home from a particular movie. So I think Warner Bros. Is actually pretty comfortable with this. It is also worth mentioning that these tax incentives are absolutely real and that they did get a lot of this big ballooned budget off the books that way. And look, man, I don't have to tell you this, but the whole discourse around Superman James Gunn's universe has been divisive. And so you have a whole bunch of people looking at this news and sort of rooting for Superman to fail. You have other people saying it's fake news and they want the film to succeed. And I think the truth is kind of like somewhere in the middle. I think this movie needs to do really well now. Like, I don't know that Warner Bros. Can stomach a massive loss, and they did spend a ton of money on this thing, but I'm not gonna sit up here and tell you it needs to be profitable in its theatrical run to secure the future of the DCU. I just don't believe that. But I also think this is worth bringing up because it shows you how sticky and how weird this situation is. This could be some DeLuca and Abdi stuff. Make sure you come by the live streams throughout the course of the week where I go into more detail about like this relationship, like what's going on with Warner Brothers. But the TLDR there is just a couple of weeks ago, maybe months ago at this point, it kind of looked like DeLuca and Abdi were on the way out, and James Gunn might actually be in charge of all of Warner Brothers films, which is wild to think about. But then Minecraft and Chicken Jockey made almost $1 billion. Sinners is absolutely crushing it. Warner Brothers is actually doing really well. That sort of secured DeLuca and Abdi's jobs. And there's still a lot of people at Warner Brothers that are just unsure about James Gunn, Peter Safran, and their whole direction. So I don't know. This reporting is quite interesting. You let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. I just noticed this goddamn chair was in the frame the whole time. Early data for the Fantastic Four shows it will not be a box office bomb and will therefore buck the trend of the last few MCU movies. This week, tickets for the Fantastic Four film officially went on sale with the release of a new trailer. And on Wednesday, we had early data that looked really encouraging. Multiple different apps that you use to purchase these tickets were crashing. And this usually happens with high traffic, so there seemed to be a ton of people getting tickets for the Fantastic Four. But it was the following day on Thursday where we got some actual data here that was really interesting. According to Fandango, this is the highest ticket sales for a pre-order for a movie this year. And with movies this year massive like Minecraft and Lilo and Stitch, that's a really encouraging number. According to Luis Fernando, who does really good box office tracking, the Fantastic Four has one of the strongest starts for a comic book movie ticket sales that he has ever seen. The first 24 hours of sales were 1.2 times ahead of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and just slightly under Thor Love and Thunder, which did incredible. Thor Love and Thunder opened at like 144 million domestic, 303 million worldwide after a really big international haul as well. And so this is really good news, man. Marvel fans like myself, we were starting to get concerned. I mean, the Daredevil show didn't chart once on Nielsen. What? Captain America Brave New World didn't make money in the box office after the Hollywood trades did the same shenanigans we just talked about with Superman and tried to tell us that the budget was way lower. Same thing with Thunderbolts, man. And I love the Thunderbolts movie, but it's about to lose Disney $100 million. So we were all really concerned about the Fantastic Four, but I don't think we really need to be that concerned anymore. This is massive pre-ticket sales. Again, crashing a bunch of apps on Wednesday and then coming in and being announced by Fandango itself to be the biggest pre-ticket sale day of any movie of the year so far. So Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios have to be breathing a sigh of relief, and I think a lot of the Marvel fandom is as well. So what does this mean? Well, it would indicate that certain characters or certain franchises are just not activating the massive amount of Marvel fans that lie in wait, ready to go watch these movies in the theater. This could also perhaps indicate that spectacle is higher on the priority list for moviegoers these days, and with Galactus doing crazy Galactus stuff, and a character like Franklin Richards, who's one of the most powerful characters from Marvel Comics, being in the film, and with the rumors of Robert Downey Jr. being in this film or in the post-credit scene, and it directly tying into Avengers Doomsday, that's just a lot more spectacle and craziness than even a Red Hulk in a Captain America movie, who was in the movie for 5 minutes. What the fuck? It would appear the movie is on track for a opening in the domestic box office of between 120 to 150 million dollars, which is absolutely massive. And if it has that same draw internationally, you could be looking at a $300+ million opening weekend for the Fantastic Four. The Fantastic Four also has a couple advantages over a lot of these other summer movies. The movie comes out 2 weeks after Superman, and there's not a lot of stiff competition for blockbusters for several weeks after that. The big Jurassic movie comes out before even Superman, then Superman comes out after that, and then 2 weeks later, the Fantastic Four drops. So with a serious amount of buzz, an awesome amount of pre-ticket sales and a serious lack of competition, Fantastic Four is looking to do very well in the box office. I'm now predicting at least $700 million worldwide and possibly even more. If the audience scores are really strong, the word of mouth is really good, you can see this movie even crack $1 billion. And oh man, would Marvel Studios and Disney feel really, really good about that considering the performance of the other two movies this year. Now let's talk about Star Wars. It came out in the Hollywood trades this week that the top choice to replace Kathleen Kennedy as the president of Lucasfilm is actually two people, Dave Filoni and Carrie Beck. Now this goes along with some other reporting that was out there, including Jeff Snyder earlier on in the year after Matt Belloni actually dropped that big scoop about Kathleen Kennedy finally leaving. What Jeff said in his follow-up reporting was that he had heard it was likely going to be Carrie Beck and Dave Filoni. Now Dave Filoni is considered royalty within Lucasfilm. He's the protege of George Lucas, and a lot of people even still at that company respect him for that fact. He's also the chief creative officer, which he did get as a promotion within the last 3 years. Now, interestingly, the article that dropped this week does kind of take shots at Dave Filoni, suggesting that some within the company feel he's too steeped in the lore, with one insider even saying he's the Ahsoka guy, not the Andor guy.
Wait, what? Really?
Just like the Superman story that we talked about earlier in this video, you can see how political games and undercutting other people can happen through the Hollywood trade. In this example, I believe there's some effort from Lucasfilm to sort of besmirch Dave's name and possibly even get the fans to get rattled up about this to make a push for perhaps a different person coming in as president. Or perhaps this will be used by Kathleen Kennedy as leverage to continue to get Dave to do what she wants. Because you have to remember, earlier this year when the news first broke at Puck from Belloni, I think. I'm sorry, Matt. I can't pronounce shit, man. When that article dropped, there was an interview done in Variety that Thursday, right before I went back on Nerd Theory with Star Wars Theory, right? It was kind of crazy. A lot of you were there. And that piece was a reaction to Belloni's piece. And it talked about how Kathy was still going to be around Lucasfilm even after she retires as president, meaning she's still going to produce several of the movies. And a lot of these characters, ideas, and concepts were stuff that she personally greenlit. And that obviously comes with some concerns. There are a lot of people like myself that think Kathleen Kennedy has done an absolutely terrible job handling the Star Wars brand. And the thought of her leaving as president, but still technically being in control, rings a lot like what Bob Iger did to Bob Chapek when he allowed Chapek to take over, but didn't even move out of his big office at the Disney studio, only to later undercut him and return to power. It also reminds me of the Amy Pascal situation, where after the Sony email leak, she was let go from Sony, but still remained as a producer for all of the Spider-Man films, intimately involved in all of that stuff. So all of this has led a lot of Star Wars fans to be concerned that there will literally be no change regardless of who replaces Kathleen Kennedy, because she will still be there. And also the fact that Carrie Beck and Dave Filoni both worked under Kathleen Kennedy and appear to have been good corporate citizens also gives a lot of fans like me concern. Are these the people to buck the certain trends and the bad practices that happened under Kathleen Kennedy's leadership? Or are they just going to do more of the same? That's the big question. Well, here's the thing, guys. I actually think there is hope for massive change at Lucasfilm. Not everybody agrees, but let me give you my take. Several months ago at this point, I dropped a massive video giving a ton of information about Ahsoka Season 2 and the future of Star Wars. One of the things I got right in that report was talking about how the next big animated show for Star Wars was going to be focused on Darth Maul. A couple of weeks later, it was revealed at Star Wars Celebration. And I don't say that to brag. I say that so that you know the source I talked to is very good. This person knows what's going on with Lucasfilm. And this person told me in no uncertain terms that there were two camps at Lucasfilm. One that wanted to do the status quo and continue to do what Kathleen Kennedy was doing. And then the other camp wanted what was described to me as an overhaul of how they make content. And given some of the reporting that came out from Joanna Robinson over at The Ringer about how Tony Gilroy was protected from massive changes that Dave Filoni wanted to make to the Andor show, and that Gilroy was protected by Kathleen Kennedy, it gave me the impression that my previous source was correct and that Dave Filoni is in a certain camp at Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy is on the other side of that. Now, here's the thing. This conversation gets a little bit awkward because Andor did get quite better in its second season, and it has proven to be more successful in the streaming category. So I think there's legitimate debate here to be had. Should there be more stuff like Andor within Star Wars? Even though I don't like Andor, I understand that Star Wars as a brand probably needs to adapt, adjust, and grow. But clearly Star Wars under George Lucas was successful enough to get Disney to shell out $4 billion to purchase the rights to the IP. And there are a lot of Star Wars fans that believe that you would get even bigger numbers if you just did George Lucas Star Wars better. Don't forget that just a couple of weeks ago, Revenge of the Sith, a 25-year-old George Lucas movie, went back into the theaters and broke records. So essentially, Star Wars finds itself at a pretty awkward place. What should the future of the content around Star Wars be? And who among the new leadership will be the one to forge that path ahead? I guess what I'll say is this. I believe a lot rides on Ahsoka Season 2. I really like Ahsoka Season 1, but it ended in a pretty sloppy way. However, as I reported in that video previously, Dave Filoni is going crazy in Season 2. It seems ambitious as hell and super fun if you are more of a George Lucas Star Wars fan. With a first season being added to its second season numbers, just like Andor did, we're going to have to see, how does Ahsoka Season 2 stack up to Andor in the Nielsen charts? What does it do to the fandom? And I think at that point, we'll have another conversation about what form the Star Wars content should take from here. But more to the point of this exact story, I truly believe that Dave Filoni does not see Star Wars the same way that Kathleen Kennedy does, and I think there could be massive changes made once Kathleen Kennedy officially retires, which this article from this week suggests will now be around the time that Bob Iger leaves the company as well. And just last night on the Hot Mic podcast, Jeff Snyder, who has very good sources, said that essentially Kathy's going to leave whenever she wants. She's not going to be forced out, but it does now appear that she'll probably leave when Iger leaves. Those are the three biggest stories this week. I hope you enjoyed getting filled up here on the Nerdy News Rundown. If you're interested in what other news was out there, you can either check out the streams we did this week, check out the videos we did on the Clips channel, which are usually more up to date on the news that's happening. And I hope you look forward to the Nerdy News Rundown as well. I'll make some adjustments. You know, it's the first week. Things look maybe not as good as they should. And as I always say, I hope you are having an awesome and a nerdy day. And I'll see you in the next video.